Welcome to Organizational Sherlocks, the podcast where business meets psychology and your organizational puzzles meet their match.
Join us for captivating stories and practical solutions to unravel your toughest challenges.
I'm Dr. Elizabeth Fleming.
And I'm Morgan Ashworth, your guides to a prescription for business success.
Let's dive in.
Well, how are we doing today, Elizabeth?
Doing well. How about you, Morgan?
I'm doing good, and we have one more question. How are you doing, Martijn? Martijn Lemmens is joining us today. Martijn, why don't you say hi and give a little intro about yourself?
Hello. Hi, Elizabeth. Hi, Morgan. And hello to the listeners. My name is Martijn Lemmens. I live in the Netherlands, in Europe. I have a science background, computer science studies many years ago. I don't want to say how many years ago, because then we are suddenly talking about age. And after a career of 30 years towards digital marketer or in digital marketing and ultimately product management, I completely changed my career into coaching, counseling people, because I realized that that was where my passion was. And I use a specific method that we will be talking about today, I'm sure. Mm-hmm. So that's a little bit about me.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, you have quite the comprehensive background, seeing all the areas you've been in. Now, what drove you into kind of the coaching, counseling side of things?
Well, I suppose that from an early age in my career, I have been very interested in people. Even during my studies, I remember that I was not a diehard technical person, but I was always interested in the machine-human interaction. How do we interact with a mouse or with a trackpad or with a screen? How does that all work? So that is already a field close to psychology and a field where psychologists are involved, actually. And then when I started my career, and first with my own company, and when we hired people, but then later at my employers, managing people, I was just always very interested. How do you motivate people? How do you ensure that you can rally people behind you? How do you support people in their careers? So yes, there was this more technical content part of the job. That was very important. That was why I was hired. But ultimately, I believe right now in my career that it's mostly about people. Because if people are happy in their job, if they can live their passion, if they get enough freedom to excel, then that is a way for you to reach your goals as a manager, as a firm, as an entrepreneur, or well, whatever your role is.
Absolutely. You know, it's interesting. And I know Morgan and probably some of our listeners know about this too, but I have a fascination with technology. My partner actually owns a technology company as well, or is a part owner in a technology company. And that machine person interaction, I think is so important. I love what you're talking about. And I think it's probably even becoming more important. Well, I know is becoming more important as we kind of progress in our world. And with that, I'm kind of curious. I know I did a little bit of pre-research on Psych K, but I am curious if you could tell us a little bit about, what the tool is all about and how kind of that machine and person interaction comes to bear with that organization or tool.
Yeah, sure. Well, I suppose Psych K in itself is not a technology, but more a method for subconscious belief change. But interestingly, in the world of Psych K, we use the computer metaphor when we talk about reprogramming our mind. Or how our subconscious is a hard drive and our limiting beliefs are just files like a Word document, and they are in your computer, and all you have to do is rewrite them.
Right.
And with a computer nowadays, that's pretty simple. You have your keyboard, yes. You open the file, you type in it, and then you press save. And Psych K is a way to actually reprogram your limiting beliefs in your subconscious mind into supportive beliefs. So you live a life of peace or a happier life or whatever you want to call that. So there is a metaphor, there is the analogy to the technology field for sure. Yeah. But other than that, Psych K is really a method to change yourself.
I imagine that's easier for maybe easier for people to take in and comprehend and see how it's possible to use that metaphor. Because I would imagine that thinking about changing your beliefs would be maybe a heavy thing, but to put it grounded in something that people already kind of know. And I'm guessing there's some, or that's a part of that for you.
Yeah, for sure. When you try to tell people how to change subconscious beliefs, ultimately it is about the experience that they need to have. We always compare that with an orange. If you want to explain somebody who has never, ever, ever eaten an orange what it tastes like, you're not going to succeed. You can talk about it for a day or a week, but the way to know what an orange tastes like is to just take one small bite. And I think the same is true with Psych K. So we talk in metaphors, and I talk about that computer metaphor and this hard drive of your limiting beliefs. And that is what people typically very much relate to, because most of us, maybe all of us, have that inner voice, that inner critic, that voice that talks in words that you wouldn't accept from your friends or your family, but you yourself are really your own critic, and typically people punish themselves for stuff. So that's what people can relate to, but then that actually part towards, and how do you change that is difficult for them. So the computer metaphor helps, but in the end I also tell people, experience it.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, great. Now, how did you first discover Psych K?
That's an interesting story. It was actually my wife who brought it home. So my wife is a psychologist, and she was always looking for ways to better serve her clients or patients, as I think psychologists call them, because she felt that her success rate wasn't high enough. And she was mostly working with people on coping strategies, not much more. So one day she was talking to a friend, and that friend said, Bruce Lipton says Psych K works. Now, my wife hadn't heard about Psych K, but she had heard about Bruce Lipton, who is a cell biologist. He wrote a book, Biology of Belief, and he's quite famous for that. So because she believed in Bruce Lipton, she thought, well, let's just search for it. And she found a course, and she went on a 3-day basic course. And on the first day already, she discovered psychologists have not really understood how behavioral change works, because it's in the field, it's all about coping mechanisms, but she already had an experience that she was able to change her subconscious mind. So how did I get to know it? Because that was your question. Well, she came home after 3 days and she wanted to practice. Now, I'm a pretty skeptical guy, maybe because of my IT background. I don't know why. Maybe I'm just skeptical. So I thought, well, I'm happy to work on something, but let's not make it too personal, not too private, not too emotional. Let's do something very practical. And she said, you can take anything. Well, that week I was in a tennis tournament at our home club. And one of the things that I had noticed over the years is that I typically could have a tennis match and I could lose from somebody who was not as good as I was, almost without reason. I didn't really understand it. So I did a balance, which is the name for a Psych K exercise. I did a balance with the goal statement. I'm allowed to show my opponent all corners of the field. And then that afternoon I had a match and I won the match. And after the match, my wife asked, did the Psych K balance help? And that's when the quarter suddenly dropped. I hadn't even realized it yet. And I thought, oh, wow, it did. Because during the match, I did notice that my opponent got really angry with himself. And they started to curse and to shout. And instead of becoming afraid, oh, you have to be friends. Oh, we need to be nice to each other. Oh, it needs to be nice on the field. Instead of my fear, I thought, oh, wow, he's angry. Now I'm going to win. And I kept hitting the balls left to right. And I realized that in the past, when my opponent got angry with himself, I got afraid and I just hit my balls directly to him because, it has to be fun at the court. So I was actually my own saboteur. I was sabotaging myself. So as I said, I'm very skeptical of new methods that do these big promises. But here I was after one balance, and I had a living experience that I had a small change in my life on the tennis field. And I thought it was not that important, but it all had to do with my fear of anger.
Yeah.
And I even realized I had that fear of anger in many parts of my life, at work, in my relationship with my parents, with friends, anywhere. So that's when my journey, and that was 2013, so that's now 12 years ago. That's when my journey with Psych K started.
Yeah. I mean, you actually talk about, reprogramming the subconscious through experience. And so
Yes.
look at that. You took the experience of utilizing balance through Psych K, and it changed your skepticism around the method. So right then and there, you're also using Psych K, I think, in and of
Yes.
itself. But no, very interesting. I love that you're not only using this method, but for others, to help coach others, but you're also utilizing it for your own benefit. And so that shows a true belief in the method itself.
Oh, thank you for bringing that up. Because one of the things we tell people that want to learn Psych K themselves is do the workshop. It's lovely. It's a beautiful experience. And then start using it with yourself first. Because if we ourselves become better people, if we become happier, that shines out to other people as well. As opposed to going out to the world and trying to help the whole world and just putting more weight on your shoulders because you feel that you are now responsible for peace in the world or whatever it is that you feel responsible for. So yeah, I think part of the Psych K field is all about apply it to yourself first and then support others in their growth journeys.
It's the idea of like filling your cup before you fill others and then continuing to refill your cup in order to fill others.
Yeah.
I always have to think about that movie that everybody who flies has seen many times, where they tell you to put your own mask on first before you help others. And it's exactly that. Because if you don't do that, then you will drown or you will suffocate while trying to help others. But working with yourself first will make you a better facilitator to support others. Yeah.
Yeah. I would completely agree. I think that self-awareness and that, like you said, the experience is so powerful and so important, not just to be able to, I mean, I think there's a lot of different ways. I'm curious what your thoughts are about this, but I mean, it's the experience of it, but it's also like the belief that it can work. And I think that people in a way can kind of feel, right? Like it's, you don't have to, just because I say it works doesn't mean it's going to work for you, but they can feel it if you've experienced it yourself, which is different than me saying, try this orange. It's really great, but I've never had one before, And I think that's really neat. I love that.
Yeah.
Plus, you know what? And I've worked in, I've worked in, the clinical side of the world and it does not work. You're right. Like from a behavioral perspective, it doesn't work to say, okay, Morgan, go do this change because it's going to change your life. Like in a lot of ways, you have to come to it on your own because otherwise that change is not meaningful, and that directive doesn't always work. So I think it is a lot about that experience of trying and figuring out what works for you.
Yeah, and you're very right that if we tell people that something will work for them, but what if it doesn't? So you're right. It is about me as a person embracing a method or a way or an advice or a piece of feedback that others give me. And I think that's also important in life when you coach people, that people can stand in their own strength, as opposed to I can be happy as long as I am in this relationship with somebody who supports me, because then I actually become dependent on that other person. And I love Psych K. I've now been using it for almost 12 years. I have made changes in many aspects of my life, and I have supported many clients, and I see happy people leaving my practice. And I also do not think that one method will be working well for 8 billion people in the world.
Sure.
There will be people, and I've met them, for whom this method is not per se the way to go. So it's really important that people can embrace what actually they believe in, or what they like, or where they have a good experience.
Yeah, I think it's also why it's important to work with someone when you're first going through Psych K, is because not every, like for you, Martijn, like you could connect, someone else's behavior to then your behavior. So someone got angry, so you stop being as competitive, right? So you're able to connect that while like after stating your balance. Also, you were able to create a very comprehensive balance. So saying like, I'm going to show my opponent every part of the game, every part of the field, right? And so you create a very specific, conspicuous balance, and then you're able to recognize behaviors. Not everyone can do that right off the bat. And so it's important to have a guide to help you create a specific, very clear balance, it sounds like. And then to be able to kind of deconstruct the situation after the balance to see where your behaviors kind of were lying and how you were reacting to people versus how you made others react. I think that's important in the coaching side of Psych K, is that not everyone will be on that same threshold of, okay, I can recognize behaviors like this and I can create a clear, quick, easy, comprehensive balance as well. Sometimes people need a little help in getting started.
Exactly. So typically when I have clients in my practice and you do a Psych K session, and all facilitators in the world should use the same 4-step process, I ask people, how are you doing? Like, what do you want to work on? And they come with a certain theme or a question or a frustration or whatever it is. And then typically in Psych K, we have a wonder question or a magical question. We say, what would you like instead? What is it you want instead? And people at first will typically tell you what they don't want. So just as an example, I ask people, how are you doing? Well, I'm really frustrated. I feel undervalued. My self-esteem is pretty low. Okay, what is it you do want? Well, I would like not to feel undervalued. I would like not to. They say they actually give me the same story, but now with a not in it, and then it is still what they don't want. So actually getting people to the point of their dream, what is it you would like to, instead of the negative feelings or that voice in your mind, that takes practicing or working with a facilitator like myself or others who can support you in that process. So I will typically tell people that I work with, well, you're still giving me what you don't want, but what is it you do want?
Right.
And then there's typically a silence.
Yeah.
And after a while, when people can formulate what they want, then you can do the balance process.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
Now, how do you apply Psych K in a professional environment? I know you work with, business owners. I know you've worked with a variety of clientele. So I want to kind of hear about Psych K in the professional setting, knowing a lot of our listeners are, in fact, in the professional setting utilizing psychology.
Yeah. Yeah, there's, whether it's professional or personal, but there's always 2 ways to use Psych K. It is either you go to a class and you learn the process yourself. So it's going to a teacher, an instructor, certified instructor like myself, or it is in one-on-one sessions. So when I work in the professional environment with entrepreneurs or business owners, either I work with people one-on-one. So, for example, I work with this entrepreneur. Maybe he is just an entrepreneur by himself, or he has built his own company. And I work one-on-one with the entrepreneur or the business leader on their own limiting beliefs. And then these are focused on their professional environment. As an example, I once had an entrepreneur or a business owner who had built a company, and by the time we spoke, the company was 70 or 80 people. And he was doing really well, but he came to a point where he really had to reorganize his company, and he had to make his company ready to sell it, or to involve other partners, sell part of the shares. And he thought that was a very difficult process. He had never done it before. He was afraid of what might happen to the people he had so carefully recruited and he had built a relationship with. So during a couple of sessions, we worked on the limiting beliefs that he had about taking the next step with his company. And then when somebody is in a better place and feels better and has actually transformed, in this case, himself, he went back to his company and he could take next steps.
Mm-hmm.
The other way, what we sometimes do is that that's usually in larger companies, is that a typical manager is so enthusiastic about the Psych K process that they say, can you not come in and train my whole department?
Okay.
I have 16 people working for me. Let's schedule a training and let's all learn Psych K. And then we go in and we teach them the processes. And then typically we add a day or two, and not per se 2 full days, but more over the course of time, we add hours to support the people in that department to actually use it. Because learning it doesn't per se mean you are already using it. That is, of course, the next step. So in summary, 2 ways, either one-on-one with a business owner or with his management team or with others in the company, or we go in for a training and then people can start using it themselves.
Out of curiosity, who would you say, and I'm kind of putting you on the spot here, but who would you say are kind of prime candidates or really good coachees, people who benefit the most from kind of this tool and mindset and all of that?
2 categories, so not one answer. It is either people who are in not such a good place anymore. For example, people who are in a burnout. It is their second time they are in a burnout. They really thought they had solved all their issues, and they get to the point like, I need to try something new, as opposed to everything I've tried in my life already.
Yeah.
And it can be on any part of their journey towards that burnout. So that's a group that I see in my practice quite often. And the other side is, and that's where I like to work with entrepreneurs, is with people who are enthusiastic to try new things.
Right.
Who think, I think of myself as being in a 10-point scale of an 8 or a 9, but actually I want to become a 10.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to become even better than I already am. And those people who are really open to change are typically the people that are also okay with trying new things. And Psych K typically is new for them. And they already learned that affirmations or coping mechanisms is not the way to change. That's just a way to cope with a situation. So that's people I see quite often as well. Okay.
That's helpful. I kind of am feeling like there's, and this is an area I completely agree with you on, is, there has to be some, I believe, and I guess maybe I'm speaking for you, Martijn, and I don't mean to, but there has to be some ownership in the change, right? And I think, like you said, in the 2 kind of examples that you gave, I can see where that ownership and that kind of desire and motivation to make change really is in the forefront. And I can imagine that's a really powerful reason that it works for them.
Yes, if I look at the things that make Psych K unique, so I love what you were saying, Elizabeth. What makes Psych K unique is the true belief of a Psych K facilitator that the wisdom or the change you can make is already available in the person that you coach. In a way, I don't do anything. I'm a mirror for people. I talk to people. I ask them questions, but it's them changing. And whenever people give me the feeling that they want my help to change, like, oh, help me change, oh, help me become happy, I will put a border, I will put a boundary there. I will tell them it's actually you that's doing the change. And of course, they are thankful after a coaching session. And in a way, I also give them back, thank yourself. Because it is us, ourselves, who are, the change is within us.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like tapping into that, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. I've definitely worked with people as a coach where it's, it's been a bit of a challenge because maybe in the workplace they've been told you will do this coaching and they're not ready for it yet. And I do see it as my job though, and my kind of maybe moral compass or my ethical responsibility to say, hey, is now really the right time? Like, how do we need to set a foundation? Because, I would never want to do any damage either. And so I think that's maybe just kind of a side thing. Like, it's okay to say no. And that took me a really long time to figure that out as a coach.
Yeah, good. It's good to figure that out, because otherwise you get all the responsibility.
Yes.
And their manager in the end won't be happy with the work that you have done.
Right.
And you can feel your shoulders getting really heavy in
exactly.
that process.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's only so much you can do as a coach. Now, Martijn, I have an odd question. Does your wife by chance practice person-centered therapy?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, I was asking because person-centered therapy is the idea that the patient has all of the answers, and you're kind of just that mirror for them. You kind of help them work through it. And knowing your wife discovered Psych K, I didn't know if that was because she practiced a certain type of therapy.
Yeah, no, not per se, no. But it's interesting. I mean, and of course, there's other methods or modalities that have similar beliefs, of course. So
Yes.
Good to hear.
There definitely are. And I know there's some therapists or psychologists that practice a variety as well. I just know certain ones, that person-centered therapy is very reminiscent of Psych K, and the coaching styles within it.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah. Now, I do have a question. We talked about how Psych K doesn't work for everyone, and maybe it's because of an ownership issue. Maybe it's because of just a lack of maybe self-awareness as they go through the process, which is why it could be important to have a coach. But have you noticed there being any cultural differences in the either acceptance or ability to utilize Psych K? I know you work with a variety of areas. I know you kind of are worldwide, but I remember talking a little bit about some of the specific areas you work in.
Yes, I'm trying to think if there's any cultural. There's definitely cultural differences when I work with people. Of course, we live in other countries. I'm teaching in Denmark, Sweden, hopefully this year in South Africa and the Netherlands. And there's definitely cultural differences. I wonder if there is a difference really in the willingness to embrace a process like Psych K. I don't think I've seen that. Maybe some countries are a bit quicker than other countries. But I don't have any proof for that. But I can imagine that the northern countries in Europe are maybe a bit more reluctant or a bit more skeptical than some other countries where there is already much more belief in that there is more between heaven and earth than only the things that we can see around us. But other than that, there's cultural differences, of course, in when you talk to people or the systemic issues that people might be facing. Yes, for sure. So I see that the topics that we discuss can be very different, going from country to country or from group to group. But actually, in adopting the process itself, I don't see too much differences.
Yeah, so maybe more of a willingness to try it than anything.
Yes. Yeah.
Have you ever had an experience with a client where maybe they were having a harder time going through these balances and maybe had a harder time taking ownership over it? And how did you work with that individual to either make them adopt Psych K, or did you turn them to a different direction, a different method?
Well, there's definitely people who came in and they did realize that they had to do something in their life because they were for so many a time in a place where they didn't want to be. And somebody had told them, hey, why don't you try this? It helped me. So they were appointed to, in this case, to me to work with. And I saw them come in with the same skepticism that I had. And I tell them that, I'm honest. I say, well, I was skeptical in the beginning as well. Shall we just see in this session of 90 minutes if there is something we can reach? And then typically they open up a little. And sometimes people go away and they choose to not go for a second session. And that's okay for me. I'm not on a mission to tell the whole world that there is one way to do things. And sometimes people are like, oh, this is interesting. And I realize an example, I think last November, where after a week, I typically send a quick email saying, hey, how are you doing? Because Psych K always ends with an action step. We have a change process to create subconscious potential. But if you don't put it out there in the world, then your life will not change. You need to change your actions as well. So typically after about a week, I ask them, how did your action step go? And then in this particular example that I have to think about, this lady wrote me back, I think within 1 or 2 hours, oh, it actually has been fantastic. And I had put you on my to-do list because I definitely want a few more sessions. This is going to help me a lot. While she came in thinking, I don't know yet. So my job, I think, is mostly to see if I can give somebody an experience like I had 12 years ago. Because if you have that, then you're willing to embrace it and to go for it. If you don't have an experience yourself, well, then it's about the orange. If you, after tasting, still don't know what it tastes like, why would you eat one?
Absolutely. Yeah. Excuse me. I can understand all of this, and like it's kind of actually motivating for me. I don't know about you, Morgan. I'm like, well, how can I do some things too? Especially in the new year. I think it's an important time. People are trying to figure out, well, what does life look like now, right? Which is kind of a bit of that magical question, as you mentioned before, Martijn. I guess I'm kind of curious, and I think maybe you've already kind of answered it, but just and maybe it depends on the person, but I'm curious, when you think about working with someone, what is a typical like timeline? Like, do they work with you? Like, what do you say is kind of maybe the average number of sessions or months that somebody maybe works using this platform before you feel like they have a really solid foundation to be able to then bring it to the rest of their lives? And maybe it depends. I'm guessing it depends.
I was thinking of how to answer this question. So thank you. Yes, it depends. But let me give you a few examples. I once had an entrepreneur who came in, and he was doing really well. Everything was okay. He just had one issue. When he faced an almost empty calendar, he had a lot of stress. Like, can clients find me? And I thought up front, when we had a quick introduction call, I thought, well, and I even told him, give Psych K a chance. If you come for a session, have the intention to have 2, 3, maybe 4 sessions before, and not per se after one session say, oh, this doesn't work for me, because sometimes you need a bit more time. At the end of the session, he went away, and he actually, his words were, this was a miracle. And when I spoke to him 2 months later, he said, Martijn, my life has completely changed. I now create free time in my calendar because I realize how important it is and that I enjoy it. But we had a wonderful session that led him to a period in his life 20 or 30 years before. He had struggled a lot, and then he had started to work really hard to overcome the struggle, and he never had let go. So he never really subconsciously had overcome the struggle. So one session was enough. I also have people who I see 15 times or more. Okay. And I always tell people, if they want more than 4 or 5 sessions, why don't you do the workshop? Learn it yourself. It's cheaper. Right. You can do much more. And I'm very enthusiastic about the workshop. And they tell me after the 3rd time I tell them do the workshop, Martijn, stop saying that. I just love it to come here once a month. You help me with something that bothers me in my life. And I always feel good when I leave here. Mm-hmm. So it can be anywhere in between one session or many more sessions. What I do tell people is, if after 3 sessions you have 0 change in your life, but you are doing your action steps and you are really committed, then maybe Psych K is not for you. Okay. Because when I 20 years ago was in a difficult place in my life, and I actually reached out to a psychologist, after 4 sessions I said, there is no match here. The answer was, oh, I thought the same, but I thought we had to try for at least 10 times. And I thought, why would you try for 10 times if after 3 or 4 sessions you realize there is no relationship building going on? We are not a match. I went away and I thought, that's not going to happen to me. I don't want people in my practice to just try. But sometimes 2 or 3 sessions is good to just give it a chance and not go from modality to modality to modality. And then after having tried 10 things, say, nothing works for me. Because that's a secondary gain that you don't want people to be with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It almost
there's
deflates them more than anything in the end.
Yeah.
Like if you keep trying, it's still not working. It's rather than finding it earlier on, this might not be the right method, doesn't mean there isn't a method for you. But if you keep trying, then it almost seems like this is the only method. And if it doesn't work for you, nothing will work for you. But that's not the case.
Yeah. It makes me think of, so I teach in a doctorate program, and one of the classes that our students take is called Common Factors. And it's a theory, a psychological theory, which is I find pretty interesting. And I think is kind of what you're talking about here too. There's different elements that make a therapeutic and or a coaching or a counseling situation effective, right? And a big one of that, or a big element, is really around that relationship, the therapeutic relationship or the rapport that you build with someone, that factor should be there in order for it to be helpful and effective and all of those things. And there's other ones like motivation and insight and self-efficacy and all of that, right? There's all other ones. But I will say again, like going back to maybe that ethical or the moral ground of, if I'm not the right fit for you, or this particular methodology is not the right fit for you, I think it's on us as professionals in this field to be able to say that, the example you gave, Martine, if that's not the right fit, right? You should have just kind of said that. Like, I'm sensing that maybe this isn't a good fit, but let me take it one step further and help you find somebody who would be, and that's how I operate in my world, because I know that I'm not going to be everyone's cup of tea, and that's okay. I don't need to.
Well, definitely. I think that's so important. I mean, people have different personalities. They have different, backgrounds. I know in certain senses, like in a counseling sense, you can talk more, like ask your therapist more about themselves to see if it really is that fit. If you feel like you have that really true interpersonal connection, it might be a little different for a coaching or for a coach or a mentor than a therapist. But I mean, personally, like I've gone to counseling in the past. I think lots of people should. I think it's helpful. And my first person immediately knew she wasn't a fit. I left after 40 minutes in the first session. Truly, I left because I just knew it wasn't going to be a fit. And then I met a new one, worked out really well. I have a friend. She realized one method of counseling didn't work for her. And so then she went on and tried a different counselor, and she was doing well with that counselor. But then, personality kind of came through with that counselor, and some personal beliefs that she was kind of pushing on her, interestingly enough. And so then person-wise, it wasn't a fit. And so then she found another person that person-wise and method-wise was a fit. And I think it's the same thing for finding the right coach or the right mentor for you as well. We've talked about mentorship on the podcast prior. I believe it was in November of 2024. So take a look back at those, and you'll hear us talk a little bit more on that side of things.
Well, and I'll add one last piece of that, because I think what you're saying is absolutely true, Morgan. And just kind of an added layer of, and this actually probably fits into your world too, Martine, but people change, we change, and it's okay. Like, your mentor today may not be the best mentor for you 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road. Same for a coach, and I think we have to leave some space for that flexibility. And if what we're wanting to help people do is make change, then we have to be accepting that they may need something different in the future too, right?
Yes, I'm trying to process everything you're saying.
Sorry.
No, it's beautiful. I think one of the things that I like very much about Psych K is that when people are true Psych K facilitators, they will facilitate a session, a process to the best of their ability, but they will also keep themselves out. We want to be Izumataks, and Izumatak is a word from the Inuit people from the Canadian Arctic. And it means something like the keeper of the sacred space in which wisdom can reveal itself. And it is the qualities of the facilitator to actually allow your partner in the facilitation relationship to come with their own transformation instead of me having an agenda for them.
Right.
And we spoke earlier about you can also use Psych K with yourself. So at the end or after every session that I have with a client, or after every day I teach a workshop, I just sit still for a couple of minutes and I think, is there something for me to learn now? Is there something that happened that actually was maybe more about me, or that I could do better, or I could change, because I want to become a better facilitator. And then I do my balances, I do my Psych K process with myself to actually improve myself. Because I want to be this neutral observer and mirror for my partner. I don't want to be the one who knows it better.
Exactly.
Because the moment I know it better, my client and me are not in rapport anymore, and or she will just lean on me to get better, and that won't work either.
Yeah,
exactly.
because then they're depending on you rather than just kind of making the
Yes.
change for themselves, because they never will be able to move on at that point.
No.
We actually talked about something similar again within our mentorship episodes, is mentors are constantly learning from their mentorship sessions with their mentees as well.
Yes, and they should.
Yeah, you still get something out of it as a mentor, even though it might be time put in and investing time into your mentee. Overall, there really shouldn't be a lot of asymmetric information, just like you kind of talked about, Martijn.
Yeah.
Well, is there anything else, Martijn, you want to discuss regarding Psych K, or discuss with our listeners about the method?
Well, there's a lot I would like to talk about, but then we will be here in another hour or so. No, maybe as a kind of summary, because we skipped that part in the beginning. So Psych K is a method to change limiting subconscious beliefs. And I believe one of the unique points of the method is that it is working at the subconscious level as opposed to coping strategies. What I love and is also unique to the method is that there is a safety protocol. It is not like a physiotherapist who just takes your leg and they start to manipulate your knee or whatever because you say that it hurts. But in the process, we are very cautious that we only work on the things where we get permission and where it's safe for our partner. And what I love is that there is this horizontal relationship. There is no therapeutic relationship, there's no vertical relationship, but there's really a horizontal relationship when we talk Psych K. And of course, as a facilitator, people look up to me and they think that I can support them. But my belief is really you support yourself. And while I see people in my practice grow, that more horizontal relationship starts to arise more and more. And I really love that. And what I wish that everybody would do is just maybe try it once. We offer introductory sessions and you can just try it and see if it works. It works online, in person. And if it is something for you, well, maybe you want to even know more.
Yeah. And I think even more importantly is if you get to learn it yourself, maybe you can bring it to the workplace or your life as a coach as well, and improve your methods with your mentees or your coachees as
exactly. Yeah. Thank you for that addition. Sorry to add one sentence, but thank you for that addition, because I think 40 to 50% of the people in our workshops are actually coaches themselves or psychologists, and they just want this additional tool in their toolbox, and then they start using it amongst the other things that they also have, which is fine.
Yeah, beautiful. About coaching the coach.
Yep.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Well, thank you, Martijn, for that beautiful summary of what Psych K is. I'm a big believer in subconscious thought, subconscious priming, or as the book Psycho-Cybernetics calls it, the creative mechanism. I'm a big believer in our use of that in life. And so it's really great to hear that there is a method that helps you verbalize it to attune those subconscious thoughts and beliefs. So thank you again, Martijn.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for joining us today. It was wonderful to meet you and to learn more about all of this. And like you said, we could probably have another hour-long conversation or more, would be my guess. So thank you again.
Thank you both.
So with that, this concludes another intriguing episode of Organizational Sherlocks. I'm Elizabeth Fleming.
And I'm Morgan Ashworth, reminding you that the journey to success is an ongoing investigation.
Stay curious, stay strategic, and keep utilizing insights to decode your business mysteries.
Join us every Tuesday for your next Who Done It. This is Organizational Sherlock's closing today's case.
We will see you all next time.